My name is Sloane Mercer, and for the longest time, I believed I was the smartest woman in Lowe's Angels, until I realized I might as well have been walking blindfolded through a hall of mirrors. Everything sparkled, and I thought the light was mine. In LA, people don't live, they curate. Every moment is a tableau. The filtered brunch, the accidental red carpet shot, the strategically messy bun that takes 45 minutes to style. I wasn't immune. I'd built my life with surgical precision, the perfect home, the perfect wardrobe, the perfect smile that told people I was content, even when I was calculating. Our house sat high above the city, all glass and marble, the kind of place magazines describe as modern yet warm, which meant expensive and echoing. The walls gleamed white, and the view from our terrace stretched all the way to the ocean, a silver shimmer at the edge of ambition. Every morning, I performed the same ritual. Wake before Ethan, pull on my silk robe, white, always white, because it looked clean even when I didn't feel it. Pad barefoot through the kitchen, past the orchid that never seemed to die, and brew my espresso. I'd drink it by the window, watching the sun rise over Lowe's Angels like a spotlight. The city glittered below, 1,000 tiny promises, all of them for sale. Ethan appeared at 8:00 a.m. sharp, predictable, composed, late 30s, but holding on to youth with gym memberships and lighting tricks. He wore his money like armor, Italian suits, gold cufflinks, a watch that cost more than a used car. He used to make my heart race. Now I could barely hear it beat when he spoke. That morning, he breezed in with his phone glued to his hand. "Investor breakfast," he said, not looking up. "Might be late tonight." "Of course," I replied. My voice always sounded calm, too calm, perhaps. A woman's calm is often mistaken for peace when it's actually strategy. He kissed my cheek, air barely touched skin, and left in a rush of Tom Ford and stress. The door closed, and silence bloomed, heavy and perfect. I stood in that silence for a long time. The house was pristine, but something beneath the surface had shifted, like hairline cracks beneath marble. Invisible, but deepening. The clues had been trickling in for months. The new cologne first, citrus and youth, sharp and restless, a scent that didn't belong to a man comfortable in his own skin. Then the late meetings, the calls he took in the hallway, the way he started turning his phone face down, even during dinner. Once I'd reached for his jacket to send it for dry cleaning, a habit of years. His hand had shot out, too quick, too defensive. "I'll do it," he'd said too evenly. And just like that, a world of trust turned brittle. Still, I didn't scream. Screamers lose power. I've never been a screamer. I'm the woman who waits, observes, and dismantles. That morning, I poured another espresso and sat by the window, scrolling through Instagram. And there she was. Tiffany Vale. If self-delusion had a face, it would wear Tiffany's lip gloss. Her feed was an art exhibit of filtered desperation, pink lighting, pouty smiles, fake Chanel, and long captions about manifesting abundance. But beneath the glitter, the truth gleamed through, as it always does for the careless. In one photo, she posed in a marble bathroom, my marble bathroom, holding a wineglass at an angle too practiced to be innocent. Behind her, blurred but unmistakable, was Ethan's watch on the counter. The caption read, "When you manifest luxury, the universe delivers Kiss Sparkle's soft life, God's favorite." Luxury. The universe. Please. I stared at the screen for a long moment, the absurdity of it almost funny. I wasn't angry yet, anger comes later, after the comedy fades. Right then, I was fascinated. There she was, the girl my husband risked everything for, the human equivalent of a clearance sale. I kept scrolling. A mirror selfie, a man's reflection in the background, a cufflink I recognized, the gold pair I'd given Ethan for our 5th anniversary, a hotel robe embroidered Mercer, my idea from last Christmas. By the third post, I'd stopped feeling disbelief. Instead, I felt something quieter, a clean, clinical detachment, like a scientist observing a failed experiment. I tapped her profile picture, enlarged her face. Tiffany had the look of a woman who'd confused youth with power, all contour and confidence, the kind of beauty that expires if you don't refrigerate it properly. Her captions told me everything I needed to know. If he wanted her, he wouldn't be here. Upgrade season nail medium sparkles. A real one doesn't compete, she replaces. How original. It was almost cute, the way she thought she'd invented infidelity. By noon, I'd seen enough. I slipped into a black dress, tied my hair in a bun, and drove down to her gym in Beverly Hills, one of those sanctuaries of vanity where women come to sweat out their insecurities. I parked across the street. The air smelled of eucalyptus and ambition. Tiffany emerged 15 minutes later, laughing into her phone, her ponytail swishing like punctuation. "Yes, babe," she was saying, loud enough for the world to hear. "He's so over her. He just needs to figure out like timing or whatever. He hates drama." The irony almost made me laugh aloud. Men always hate drama, until they're the ones directing it. I watched her walk to her pink convertible, of course she drove a pink convertible, and slide in, humming some song about female empowerment that she clearly misunderstood. I studied her for a long moment. The entitlement, the carelessness, the joy of a woman who doesn't know she's a punchline yet. Then, very calmly, I started the car and drove home. The city was gold in the afternoon light, too bright, too smug. Los Angeles has this way of mocking you when you're betrayed. It glitters louder, laughs harder. Billboards for luxury watches and plastic surgeons flashed by, preaching perfection like gospel. When I reached home, the house greeted me with silence again, expensive, echoing silence. I poured myself a glass of Chardonnay, the one Ethan saved for guests, and leaned on the marble counter. It was cool beneath my palm, flawless, but I could almost feel the fractures inside it now, thin as whispers. I walked to the balcony, overlooking the city. The air was thick with orange blossoms and smog. Somewhere below, someone was living a simpler life, arguing over bills or parking or burnt toast, and suddenly I envied them. People like me don't get the relief of shouting. We just scheme quietly. I took a sip of wine and closed my eyes. There was no crying, no throwing of glasses, just thought. Clean, efficient, precise thought. Tiffany wanted attention. She'd get it. Ethan wanted freedom. He'd choke on it. They didn't know who they were dealing with. I wasn't some heartbroken wife waiting for closure. I was a strategist who'd been underestimated. The evening came soft and violet, spilling shadows across the marble floor. Ethan came home later than usual, humming, smug. He kissed me on the forehead, a performance, really, and poured himself a drink. His phone buzzed twice. He didn't look at me when he smiled. "How was your day?" I asked, voice warm, curious. "Busy, you know how it is." "Of course," I said. I smiled, too, the same way one smiles at a man standing over a trapdoor. We had dinner in our glass-walled dining room, city lights flickering below us like distant applause. Ethan talked about nothing, markets, meetings, the new golf club. I listened, nodding, cataloging. Every word was a thread in a tapestry of deceit I was already unweaving in my mind. When he finally went upstairs, I stayed behind. I ran my fingers across the marble table, cold and smooth. There it was again, that quiet crack beneath the surface, invisible to anyone else but clear as day to me. Cracks never ruin marble immediately. They just give you a place to start breaking it beautifully. Morning came softly, the kind of golden light Los Angeles likes to pretend is natural. I woke before Ethan, as I always did. The house was still. The air conditioning hummed low, a mechanical heartbeat. He was sprawled across his side of the bed, sheets tangled, one arm flung over a pillow like he was holding something that wasn't there. I watched him for a long time. Once upon a time, I'd have thought he looked peaceful. Now, all I saw was someone practiced at pretending, even in sleep. His phone glowed faintly on the nightstand, face down as always, like a secret trying to stay buried. I slipped out of bed. The silk robe whispered around my legs as I crossed the room, quiet enough that even the marble didn't dare echo my footsteps. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled faintly of last night's Chardonnay and citrus cleaning spray. The counters gleamed under the morning light, cold, immaculate, empty. I started the espresso machine. The hiss of steam filled the room, small and steady, grounding me. For a moment, I let myself breathe, the kind of long, silent breath that feels like an act of rebellion. I watched the sun climb through the window and paint streaks of amber across the countertop. It looked like serenity. It was. It was stillness before movement. I sat at the table with my cup and my thoughts, which lately had become the same thing. The espresso was dark and bitter appropriate. I opened my tablet, checked the news, emails, and finally, habitually, Instagram. Tiffany had posted again. Of course she had. She was at brunch somewhere in West Hollywood, a cafe that survived entirely on influencer lighting and avocado toast. Her caption read, "If he wanted her, he'd be with her. Know your worth, ladies' kiss mark soft life morning manifestation." In the reflection of her sunglasses, faint but visible, was Ethan's arm, the cuff of his navy shirt, the watch I'd bought him in Florence. I smiled, a small private smile that never reached my eyes. She was bold, I'd give her that, but boldness without intelligence is just noise, and Tiffany Vale was loud. The doorbell chimed faintly. Delivery. The florist. Roses white, Ethan's idea of keeping up appearances. A standing order once a week. I signed for them, thanked the delivery boy, and placed the bouquet in the glass vase by the entryway. They looked perfect. Pointless, but perfect. That's what our marriage had become, a floral arrangement. Carefully placed, regularly replaced, utterly scentless. By the time Ethan came downstairs, I was halfway through my second coffee. He looked polished, energized, his tie sharp, his lies sharper. "Morning," he said, as if mornings hadn't become battlefields. "Morning," I replied, setting my cup down. "You're up early for someone who got in at, what was it, 11:30. He blinked, hesitated a fraction too long. "Had a late meeting with clients, went long, you know how it is." "I do," I said softly. "I just didn't realize your clients wore coral lipstick." He froze mid-step. For a heartbeat, the silence in the kitchen expanded until it felt like pressure against glass. Then he laughed, easy, fake, the laugh of a man convinced charm could fix anything. "You're imagining things again, Sloane." "Am I?" I tilted my head, the faintest smile playing at my mouth. "You should get that jacket cleaned. There's a stain on the collar." He looked down instinctively. There wasn't one. I just wanted to see him look. He muttered something about traffic and left soon after, his footsteps echoing down the marble hall. The door closed behind him, and once again, silence settled softer now, almost indulgent. I stood there for a moment, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt obscene. Every polished surface reflected my face back at me, serene, beautiful, untouchable. I looked like every headline of The Perfect Wife. It was almost funny. Almost. I picked up the vase of roses, carried them to the trash, and let them fall in. The petals landed soundlessly, white against the silver bin. There. A beginning. I turned back to the table, opened my planner, and began to write. Not lists or chores, strategy. Names of people, timelines, opportunities. If Ethan thought deceit was his art form, he was about to meet a master curator. Outside, the day brightened, sharp and glaring, the city stretching itself awake in glitter and pretense. Somewhere out there, Tiffany Vale was rehearsing her next caption, convinced she'd won. And in a way, she had for now. But I was done being the quiet half of the story. If she wanted to play the main character, I'd write the script. By noon, the house felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with decision. I dressed slowly. Ivory blouse, tailored beige trousers, hair swept into a low knot. Power in simplicity. The woman in the mirror didn't look betrayed, she looked ready. I slipped on my sunglasses, grabbed my keys, and drove out of the gated community, past the rows of manicured palms that all looked like they were pretending to. I wasn't headed anywhere in particular, not yet. I let the car glide through Los Angeles midday traffic, the skyline a haze of glass and illusion. I passed billboards for beauty clinics and streaming shows that promised reinvention. The city loved stories of transformation. It just didn't know mine was beginning. I parked outside a little cafe off Melrose, the kind with plants hanging from the ceiling and people pretending to write screenplays while stalking each other's exes. I ordered a cappuccino and sat near the window. From here, I could see Tiffany's salon across the street. Yes, that salon, her place of worship, the headquarters of filtered selfies and thinly veiled captions. She wasn't there, not yet, but her stylist was, the one she tagged in every post. Lexi, I knew her, or rather, I knew how to know her. I sipped my coffee, then pulled out my phone and typed a message. Sloane, Lexi, it's Sloane Mercer. We met at the charity gala last fall. Do you have a free slot this week? Thinking of trying something new. It was polite, warm, just enough friendliness to be disarming. She replied within minutes. Lexi, oh hi, of course. I can squeeze you in tomorrow at 3 p.m. Want me to book it? Sloane, perfect, see you then. Kiss Mark. I put the phone down. The tiniest of smiles curled at the corner of my lips. This wasn't about hair. This was about proximity, about understanding the ecosystem of her world, the people who fed her ego, the whispers that kept her glowing. You can't dismantle a rival from outside her circle. You have to step inside it, elegantly, unnoticed. As I watched people stroll past the cafe window, my reflection stared back at me, calm, centered, and utterly unbothered. For the first time in weeks, the bitterness in my chest shifted. Not gone, but transformed, refined into something sharper. I left a tip on the table, stood, and adjusted my sunglasses. The city light caught the gold trim just so, flashing like a wink. Outside, Los Angeles was all heat and noise, palm trees swaying like gossip. Somewhere, Tiffany was probably smiling into her front camera, certain she was untouchable. And maybe she was. For now. But by tomorrow afternoon, I'd be sitting in her chair, chatting with her stylist, sipping her favorite iced matcha, and learning the rhythm of her kingdom. You can't win a game you don't understand. And I, Sloane Mercer, had just enrolled in the side chick school of strategy. Class was officially in session. The next day, the sun came dressed to impress, high, loud, and mercilessly golden. Los Angeles was already humming with performance. Convertible tops down, sunglasses on, everyone pretending they weren't late for something. I parked in front of Mason Lexi, the kind of salon where even the air seemed to moisturize your self-esteem. The windows gleamed like they'd been polished by angels with ring lights. Inside, I could already hear the faint clink of glass bottles and the low laughter of women who'd made gossip a sport. I stepped in. Instant warmth, the smell of hairspray and coconut oil, and that hum of curated chaos, blow dryers, soft R&B, and the occasional babe, you look amazing. The receptionist's smile was sharp enough to file diamonds. Hi, welcome to Mason Lexi. Do you have an appointment? Yes, I said smoothly. Sloane Mercer, 3 o'clock with Lexi. Recognition flickered, not from fame, but from reputation. Ethan's wife. The one who sponsored that Art Foundation event last spring. The kind of woman they talk about in hushed tones when they think she can't hear. Of course, she said quickly, her tone sliding into deference. Right this way, Mrs. Mercer. Lexi emerged from behind a styling chair, tall, all limbs and platinum hair, her face the precise geometry of someone who'd built herself in front of a mirror. Oh my God, Sloane, you look incredible. I can't believe it's been since the gala. Still running the city, huh? Barely, I said, smiling, just trying to keep up. She ushered me into her chair, the throne of transformation. I took my seat, and the mirror did what mirrors always do, told the truth too quietly. So, Lexi began, draping the cape around my shoulders. What are we doing today? Something lighter, I said. A little more undone, but still expensive. Lexi grinned. Say no more, that's my signature. As she sectioned my hair, I scanned the salon through the mirror. Rows of women, scrolling, gossiping, sipping iced lattes like communion. Every few minutes, I caught a flicker of a familiar tone, Tiffany Vale. The way her name flitted from mouth to mouth, buoyed by curiosity and envy. She was here this morning, Lexi said casually, like she'd read my mind. Oh. Yeah, needed a refresh before her influencer shoot. That girl's a riot. Her tone was affectionate, but tired. The kind of tone stylists reserve for clients who tip well, but drain the soul. She must keep you busy, I said lightly. You have no idea, Lexi said, rolling her eyes. She's sweet, don't get me wrong, but she's a lot. Always with the drama, you know her boyfriend. The businessman, real private guy, won't let her tag him. Guess he's married or something. My reflection smiled faintly. People do love secrets. Lexi kept talking, and I kept listening, letting every word sink in like perfume. Apparently, Tiffany had been super stressed lately, complaining about a woman who didn't appreciate him, and how he said he was going to leave her soon. Of course he did. They always say that. Poor girl, I murmured, feigning sympathy. That kind of waiting must be exhausting. Lexi nodded. Tell me about it, but she's convinced he's serious this time. Even booked them a weekend in Santa Barbara. Romantic, huh? Adorable, I said, sipping the matcha she'd offered me. The taste was grassy, too sweet, like innocence pretending to be healthy. I caught my own eyes in the mirror, calm, unbothered, gleaming. Lexi thought she was just making conversation. But I was cataloging every word, every careless confession. When she spun the chair for the final reveal, my hair looked like sunlight had a favorite soft waves, natural but expensive, effortless perfection. Lexi clapped her hands. Oh, honey, you're glowing. Ethan's gonna lose his mind. I smiled, slow and deliberate. Let's hope so. I paid, tipped generously, more than Tiffany ever would, and left her with a little wink. I left the salon with hair that screamed confidence and a heart that didn't quite believe the performance. Outside, the air hit warmer, brighter. I stood by my car for a moment, scrolling through Tiffany's latest post. There it was, a boomerang of clinking glasses, captioned, "Manifesting my weekend in paradise with him. Palm sparkles." I saved it, then opened Ethan's calendar app, the one synced to our shared home system. Santa Barbara, Friday to Sunday. Conference retreat. Oh, darling. For a man so meticulous, he really should have known better than to let his devices sink. The wind lifted my hair slightly as I smiled to myself. Lexi had given me more than a new look. She'd handed me the coordinates of betrayal. And that, I thought, as I slipped into my car, was the difference between a wife and a side chick. A side chick gets attention. A wife gets information. And I was about to make that very, very expensive. The drive home was silent, except for the low hum of the car's engine and the occasional buzz of my phone. Group chat, board updates, charity invites. Noise, all of it. I turned off the music and rolled the windows down. The evening light had started to dip, melting gold into bruised pink. Lowe's Angels, that eternal liar, looked almost soft, almost honest. When I pulled into our driveway, the house stood still and stately, as if holding its breath. The gardener had just left. The hedges looked symmetrical enough to make God jealous. Inside, the air smelled faintly of roses, new ones. Ethan's doing, no doubt, a last-minute atonement ritual. I set my purse down on the console table and looked at the vase. Tall, crystal, perfect. I plucked one white rose from the bunch, twirled it between my fingers, and murmured, "Let's see if you still smell so sweet after the weekend." I walked upstairs, slipped off my heels, and poured myself a glass of wine. Not Chardonnay this time, Malbec, something dark and patient. From the living room, I could see the flicker of the television Ethan always left on mute when he wasn't home, like the ghost of company. It was Wednesday. That meant he'd be working late. Translation, rehearsal dinner for his affair. I sat on the couch, laptop open, and began to research Santa Barbara hotels. It didn't take long. Tiffany wasn't subtle. She'd tagged a preview photo in her stories the week before the edge of a blue-tiled pool, a cocktail, and a white umbrella with the logo the Miramar Pearl. Luxury meets pretension, their type. I clicked the website, scrolled through the suites, then smiled. I knew the manager. I'd hosted a charity brunch there last summer. A quick text later, and I had a quiet confirmation. Mr. Mercer and a Ms. Vale are booked for our Pacific villa. Check-in Friday, 2 nights. My reflection in the laptop screen smiled back, sharp, deliberate. Perfect. I closed the lid and leaned back against the sofa. The silence was heavy, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt strategic. I was building something, carefully, quietly. And when I build to last. My phone buzzed again, a message from Ethan. Running late, don't wait up, love you. I read it twice, then replied. Of course, be safe, read. And then, because I have a cruel sense of humor, I set the wine glass down and began to pack not a suitcase, but a plan. I opened the guest bedroom closet, the one he thought I never used. Inside, a small black duffel bag sat waiting from my last business trip. I packed light, a silk slip dress, a pair of kitten heels, my favorite perfume, the one he used to call distracting. Old habits die beautifully. Then I sat at my vanity and looked at myself under the soft lamplight. My hair, Lexi's masterpiece, fell in careless, glossy waves. My face was calm, unreadable. The kind of face you wear when you already know how the movie ends. I took a deep breath. This wasn't rage. This was choreography. By the time Ethan got home, I was in bed pretending to be asleep. He moved quietly, tiptoeing like guilt had weight. He showered, checked his phone twice, and slipped under the covers beside me. I could smell her perfume, faint but there. I stayed still, eyes closed, lips almost smiling. Because here's the thing about cheaters. They think the danger is in getting caught. It is. It's in being studied. And I was studying him like a thesis. As his breathing evened out, I turned slightly, watching the outline of his profile against the dim light. The man who thought he was winning. The next morning, when he left for the office, I kissed him at the door, soft and sweet, the way habit demanded. And as the door clicked shut, I whispered to no one. Enjoy your trip, darling. It's going to be unforgettable. Santa Barbara had the kind of beauty that looked expensive on camera. Sun-polished, sea-salted, and carefully color-graded by God. The Miramar Pearl Resort shimmered along the coastline, its white villas lined like teeth, smiling too wide. Every palm tree seemed to pose for Instagram. Couples strolled barefoot, glasses of rosé in hand, pretending love was effortless. I checked in at noon on Friday, 24 hours before Ethan and Tiffany were due to arrive. Under a different name, of course, Mrs. Lawson. A nod to my mother's maiden name and my father's favorite revenge habit, changing identities mid-story. The receptionist smiled the professional smile of someone trained to never see too much. Welcome to the Miramar Pearl, Mrs. Lawson. You'll be in Villa 12. Ocean view, private terrace, complimentary champagne. Lovely, I said. I'll need a bit of privacy during my stay, no disturbances, please. Of course. I signed the receipt, thanked her, and wheeled my small suitcase through the polished hallways, white walls, pale oak floors, the faint scent of lemon verbena trailing through the air. Villa 12 was perfect. Floor-to-ceiling glass doors open to a view of the Pacific, so bright it looked unreal. The kind of place people go to escape guilt, or film it. I unpacked slowly, neatly. A few outfits, my laptop, a bottle of wine. Then I sat on the terrace, letting the breeze lift my hair. Below, the resort buzzed softly, waiters gliding between tables, guests laughing over oysters and secrets. This, I thought, is what hell would look like if it had valet parking. I poured myself a glass of champagne and watched the ocean pulse against the shore. Every wave felt like a countdown. At 3 o'clock, I made my first move. A visit to the front desk. Friendly, harmless, Sloane-esque. "Hi," I said, leaning casually on the counter. "I'm hosting a private dinner tomorrow evening for a couple friends who'll be checking in, the Mercers. Could you make sure their room is close to the ocean terrace? I'd like it to be a surprise." The young concierge smiled. "Of course, Mrs. Lawson. They're actually booked in our Pacific villa right next to yours, as it happens." "Perfect," I said. "And could you do me a favor? When they arrive, please send over a bottle of your finest sparkling wine on me. Just tell them it's a welcome from an admirer of love." He chuckled. "That's sweet." I smiled. "Isn't it?" By sunset, I made dinner reservations for one at the cliffside restaurant overlooking the water. I dined alone, quietly, while couples around me performed affection with the precision of trained dancers. Every now and then, I caught the faint sound of a camera shutter, the sparkle of a flash. Someone's vacation content. Someone curated happiness. I lifted my glass toward the horizon. "To tomorrow," I murmured. "To performances." When I returned to the villa, the air had cooled. I sat at the vanity, brushed out my hair, and checked my phone. Tiffany's Instagram story had gone up an hour ago. "Weekend, loading kiss mark Miramar Pearl, my person deserve it all." I almost laughed. She'd posted the logo of the resort, the same curling gold script that gleamed on the notepad beside my bed. I reached for the pen, wrote a single line across the first page. "A good affair is like a soufflé, pretty until you poke it." Then I closed the notebook, slid it into the drawer, and turned out the lights. Morning would come soon enough, bringing Ethan and his echo of innocence. And I would be here, smiling next door, the ghost in their paradise. The night wrapped itself around the resort like silk, quiet, expensive, and faintly perfumed with salt and regret. From my terrace, the ocean stretched out in a dark, restless shimmer. The air was warm, the breeze soft enough to feel staged. Somewhere down the beach, someone was laughing, the kind of laughter that carries champagne and carelessness. I sat there barefoot, robe tied loosely, a glass of wine in hand. My hair moved slightly in the wind, and I thought, not for the first time, how strange it was to be this calm. Revenge isn't rage. Rage is loud, sloppy, predictable. Revenge, when done correctly, feels like clarity. I took a slow sip and let the memory come, uninvited but familiar. It was 2 years ago. The night Ethan told me he was too tired for dinner with my friends, and I went alone. When I came back, there was lipstick on the rim of a water glass on his desk. Not mine. A shade called Coral Heat. I'd seen it before. On a stranger's smile, at a gallery opening. That was the night I realized marriages don't collapse all at once. They erode. Quietly. Elegantly. Until one day, you're sipping Chardonnay across from a man you don't recognize, talking about weekend plans that will never happen. I set the glass down and let my eyes wander back to the ocean. It glittered like deceit, beautiful from a distance, deadly underneath. In the villa next door, the lights were still off. Tomorrow, they would arrive. They'd check in, kiss in the lobby, maybe take a selfie by the fountain. Tiffany would tag the resort with a caption that screamed confidence and begged for validation. Ethan would smile, the smile he practiced on me for years. And I would be right here, sipping coffee on my terrace, listening to every word through these paper-thin walls. The thought made me grin. My phone buzzed softly beside me. A text from Lexi. "Girl, your hair looked fire today. Tiffany's gonna die when she sees it face fire." I typed back. "Let's hope she does," winking face. Then I set the phone aside and pulled my legs onto the lounge chair, wrapping the robe tighter. The sea air was cool now, faintly damp. Somewhere in the distance, waves broke against the rocks, soft, deliberate applause. On the small table beside me, I'd placed Ethan's favorite cologne, Elham Blue. I'd tucked it into my bag before leaving home, a trophy in glass. I uncapped it and let the scent drift out, clean, confident, deceitful. Funny how a smell could carry so much history. I remembered the early years, the laughter, the long drives up the coast, the way he'd reach over to touch my knee while saying, "Don't ever stop looking at me like that." And I hadn't. Not until he stopped deserving it. Now I'd look at him differently. I'd look until he broke eye contact first. I set the bottle down, turned on the small speaker by the bed, and played soft jazz, slow, dreamy, unbothered. Something a woman listens to when she's done crying and started planning. Lying back against the pillows, I let the music fill the space between thought and satisfaction. Tomorrow, he'd walk into the same sunlight he used to share with me. He'd hold another woman's hand, soft, manicured, empty. And I'd be there watching, smiling, documenting every ounce of his performance. Because nothing frightens a liar more than a witness who refuses to leave quietly. The waves outside grew slower, steadier, like a heartbeat syncing with mine. I turned off the light. "Sleep well, Mrs. Lawson," I whispered to my reflection in the glass. "Tomorrow, the curtain rises." And with that, I closed my eyes, the faintest smile still resting on my lips, the kind that says, "You have no idea what's coming." Dawn came quietly, the way expensive hotels prefer it, soft light spilling through gauze curtains, the ocean murmuring like a well-trained background track. I woke before my alarm, eyes open, mind already alert. My body knew. There's a stillness that comes the morning a plan takes shape, like the calm that settles over a theater right before the curtain rises. I lay there for a while, listening. The distant rhythm of waves, a gull somewhere overhead, the faint hum of air conditioning, even the whisper of sheets against my skin. Perfection has a sound. It's almost silence. I rose and walked barefoot to the terrace. The air was cool, faintly salted, and the horizon bled gold, the first line of the day written across the sea. I leaned on the railing, robes slipping slightly off one shoulder. The light brushed against my face, and I thought how strange it was that betrayal looked so beautiful in daylight. Somewhere behind the wall of glass, the resort was beginning to stir. A housekeeping cart rattled faintly on the path below. A waiter arranged chairs for breakfast on the deck. The smell of toasted brioche drifted up from the restaurant, warm, indulgent, sinful. It reminded me of the early years with Ethan, those Sunday mornings we used to make pancakes, barefoot in our first apartment, laughing about things that actually mattered. Before success. Before late meetings. Before Tiffany Veil and her coral lipstick. I smiled faintly. Nostalgia is a thief with good manners. It knocks before it steals your peace. I turned back inside and started the day the way every woman in control should, slowly. I showered, letting the hot water beat against my skin until the steam felt like armor. I exfoliated, moisturized, brushed out Lexi's careful waves until they gleamed again, an effortless halo of precision. On the counter sat two dresses, a white sundress and a black silk slip. White was innocence. Black was elegance with undertones of danger. I chose the black. It moved when I did liquid, quiet, exact. My makeup was minimal but strategic. Soft skin, sharp eyes, red mouth. The kind of red that photographs beautifully but warns at close range. I stood before the mirror, earrings in hand, and thought, if he doesn't recognize this version of me, good. I wasn't the woman he betrayed. I was the woman he taught to act like nothing hurt. A soft knock startled me from my thoughts. Room service. A waiter rolled in a tray, silver domes, linen napkins, a single white rose in a slim vase. "Compliments of the Miramar Pearl, Mrs. Lawson," he said, smiling. "Breakfast for one." I smiled back, signing the slip. For now. When he left, I lifted the dome, eggs, toast, strawberries glistening like secrets. And beside the plate, a small folded note. "We hope your weekend is restorative." Restorative. I laughed softly. If only they knew. I ate slowly, savoring each bite like it was part of the ritual because it was. Every detail mattered. every breath deliberate. By 8, the world outside had fully woken. I could hear the shuffle of new arrivals, wheels of suitcases rolling along the stone path, the polite chatter of couples checking in. I set down my fork, wiped my lips, and stepped onto the terrace again. Below, the staff were lining up luggage carts, polishing glasses, refolding towels that had already been folded. Perfection was the job here. Deception, the hidden service. And I was just the guest next door. My phone buzzed once. A notification. Tiffany Vale has posted a new story. I opened it. A slow-motion clip of the highway, palm trees blurring, pop song blaring underneath. Caption: on our way, smiling sparkles, weekend of love, Santa Barbara bound. I smiled. Of course she was broadcasting the route. Ethan's hand even made a cameo in the corner of the frame, his wedding ring missing. Predictable, I murmured. The sun was higher now, the air warmer, almost theatrical in its brightness. Somewhere on that same highway, they were rehearsing lines for their weekend play. The giggles, the whispered finally alone, the illusion of privacy. Meanwhile, I was setting the stage. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and stopped at one name, Rachel Torres. Old college friend, now a journalist, the kind who loved stories about modern relationships in crisis. I typed a text but didn't send it yet. Timing is everything. I slipped on my sunglasses, leaned against the terrace rail, and waited. Patience wasn't surrender. It was poise sharpened to a knife's edge. Below, the valet pulled up another silver car. The door opened. A flash of coral pink. A laugh I could recognize from a mile away. They're here, I whispered and smiled. They arrived with the kind of energy that didn't belong in quiet places. Even from my terrace, I could feel it, the vibration of chaos wrapped in designer luggage. Tiffany Vale emerged first. Pink dress, high ponytail, the kind of beauty that depended entirely on lighting and validation. She had that wide, overconfident smile of a woman who believes she's special because someone else's husband told her so. Behind her came Ethan. Same pressed jaw, same tailored ease, same hands that once adjusted my necklace before a gala. Now they carried someone else's bags. I stayed still. Not out of shock, that was gone months ago, but out of curiosity. I wanted to see the details. The way they walked together, slightly mismatched, his pace too slow, hers too quick, like she was always reaching for something she hadn't quite been promised. She clung to his arm, laughing too loud at something he hadn't said. He looked practiced. That same half-smile he used in board meetings, the one that said, everything's fine, as long as you don't look too close. From up here, they looked like a perfume ad, perfectly curated deceit in natural lighting. Below, the valet was sweating. The concierge smiled too hard. And I sipped my coffee, tasting the faint bitterness with amusement. Welcome to Santa Barbara, I murmured, voice low. Population delusion. The wind lifted the sheer curtain behind me, brushing against my back like the hand of something approving. I watched them check and Tiffany flipping her hair, giggling as she tried to look casual while ensuring everyone saw her. The receptionist, bless her, didn't even blink when Tiffany called Ethan, baby, loud enough for the palm trees to register it. My fingers itched toward my phone again. A small, exquisite part of me wanted to post a picture, same ocean, same hour, maybe even tag the location. But no, that would be too loud. My revenge wasn't a song, it was a sonata, slow, elegant, and scored with restraint. Instead, I took a single photo, the view from my balcony, horizon, sea, and the faint outline of their cabana number below mine. I didn't post it, I saved it. Every plan needs artifacts. The sun climbed higher, slicing through the glass, casting my reflection against the window. For a moment, I studied it. The smooth hair, the calm mouth, the eyes that had stopped looking for reasons. You're doing beautifully, I whispered to my reflection, almost amused. because truly I was. They disappeared into their cabana, and the air felt oddly lighter, like the villa itself exhaled. The staff wheeled their luggage inside. Tiffany's laughter trailed off into muffled nothing. And I remained where I was, motionless, patient, the quiet observer of my own undoing and rebirth. Below, two housekeepers gossiped softly as they swept the paths. One gestured subtly toward the couple's room, smirking. Even they could tell. Affairs have a smell, sweet, desperate, and slightly rotten. I finished my coffee, poured another, and sat at the edge of the chaise lounge. The fabric was still cool beneath my skin. From here, I could see the sea curling gently onto the shore, dissolving itself again and again. The most elegant metaphor for human denial I'd ever witnessed. I thought of how Tiffany must feel right now, victorious maybe. How she probably believed she'd won something. Poor thing. Mistresses rarely realize they've inherited someone else's exhaustion. My eyes drifted to the notebook on the table. I flipped it open to a page titled Notes on What He'll Regret. I added a single line beneath it. He will miss my silence first. Then, beneath that, I drew a small heart, because even revenge deserves a touch of romance. The clock on my phone blinked, 7:48 a.m. In 30 minutes, the couple would likely head to breakfast, where they'd perform the soft launch of their scandal. I smiled faintly and stood. Let them perform. I had a front row seat. I brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, adjusted my sunglasses, and whispered, not out of malice, but as a promise. Class is in session. By the time I reached the restaurant terrace, the morning had turned glossy, the kind of sun that made even lies look photogenic. The tables gleamed under white umbrellas, waiters floated like synchronized swans, and every plate that passed looked like it had been styled by a food magazine intern with a trust fund. I paused at the entrance. The hostess, all dimples and corporate hospitality, smiled. Table for one, Mrs. Lawson. Please, I said, somewhere with a view. She led me to the edge of the terrace, ocean in front, palm trees whispering on cue. But I wasn't looking at the view. My eyes were already scanning the tables. There they were. 2 rows over. Tiffany Vale, wearing oversized sunglasses that probably cost more than her rent used to, was perched across from Ethan, laughing at something on her phone. Probably herself. Ethan looked domesticated. In that half-slumped way men get when they realize they've traded peace for noise but can't back out without a scene. I unfolded my napkin, ordered black coffee, and opened the menu I didn't intend to read. Every few seconds, Tiffany's laugh punctured the air, too bright, too eager, the kind that made even seagulls pause mid-flight. She reached across the table, touched Ethan's hand dramatically, and whispered something that made her giggle again. It was an astonishing performance. I almost applauded. My coffee arrived. I took a slow sip, savoring the bitter heat, the way caffeine and vengeance both wake the blood in similar ways. Their waiter appeared, a young man named Diego, all dimples and misplaced optimism. He gave them a smile too kind for what he was witnessing. I'll have the avocado toast, Tiffany said, like she'd invented it. And could you make sure the eggs are Instagram sunny? Of course, Diego said politely. Ethan ordered black coffee. I smiled faintly. He still drank it the way I taught him, no sugar, no cream, like an adult. When Diego reached my table, he froze for a microsecond. Recognition flickered in his eyes. He glanced from me to Ethan, then quickly schooled his face back into neutrality. I met his gaze calmly and said, just the same for me, and an extra saucer of lemon slices, please. Of course, ma'am. As he walked away, I saw him hesitate slightly. He knew something was off. People always do, even if they can't name it. I crossed my legs, angled my chair toward the sea, and let the silence between us stretch like silk. Ethan hadn't seen me yet, but Tiffany had. It happened like a slow scene in a noir film, her gaze drifting lazily around the terrace, landing on me, freezing for half a heartbeat. Her mouth parted slightly, then curved into a smirk, the kind she'd probably practiced in bathroom mirrors. Our eyes met. I raised my coffee cup, a polite, languid toast, then went back to my phone. It was a small move, but it hit her like thunder. I saw her posture stiffen, her fake laugh stutter, her hand clutch the straw in her mimosa a little too tightly. Ethan noticed. "Something wrong?" he asked. She smiled, brittle now. "No, nothing, just surprised." He turned, following her gaze. The moment his eyes found me, his whole body went still. Not the shocked stillness of guilt, but the heavy realization that the ground beneath him had shifted. "Morning," I said, like I was greeting a neighbor in yoga class. His mouth opened, then closed. Tiffany blinked, her glossed lips tightening. "Wow, small world." "Isn't it?" I said, voice sweet as syrup. "Santa Barbara always feels like the perfect place to." I paused delicately. "Reconnect." Ethan's jaw worked. "Sloane, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't," I said, smiling. "You never do." Silence, the kind that makes silverware suddenly too loud. Diego returned with my breakfast. "Your lemon slices, ma'am," he said carefully, setting them down like peace offerings. "Thank you," I replied, still smiling. "You have excellent timing." I squeezed a slice over my avocado toast, letting the juice drip slowly, deliberately. The smell of citrus filled the air, sharp, clean cutting. "I didn't realize this resort had such cozy accommodations," I said lightly, glancing at their table number. "You two must be thrilled." Tiffany laughed, forced. "Oh, we are. It's been so refreshing to get away." "I can imagine." I tilted my head, studying her the way one studies a piece of modern art, trying to decide if it was brave or just loud. "Travel really reveals character." Ethan's voice was low, tense. "Sloane, maybe we should." "Eat," I said sweetly. "Yes, do. You'll need the energy." Her eyes narrowed. "For what?" "Oh, darling," I said, smiling without teeth. "You'll see. Breakfast is only the first course." Then I turned back to my plate, cutting into my toast with perfect precision. The knife glinted in the sunlight, silver, elegant, and entirely symbolic. The air between our tables felt almost charged, like the moment right before lightning decides where to land. I stirred my coffee slowly, eyes down, face serene. The trick was in pretending the world was fine. That's how you make people nervous. Across from me, Tiffany was failing at that art miserably. Her laugh, once loud and glittery, now came out thin, high-pitched, and slightly damp. Every time her phone buzzed, she flinched. "Everything okay?" Ethan murmured, leaning forward, trying to sound casual. "MMHMM," she lied, stabbing her avocado with the ferocity of someone losing an argument in her head. I took another bite, letting the toast crunch softly. It was almost meditative, the sound of composure, of control. When I looked up, her gaze darted away too fast. Guilt had a scent, and it was practically wafting across the terrace, a perfume of panic and cheap triumph. "You should try the lemon," I said conversationally, slicing another wedge. "Brightens everything." Tiffany smiled thinly. "I'm fine, thanks." "Oh, I can tell." I dabbed at my lips with the napkin, folding it neatly. "You have that glow." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." "That little post-indulgence radiance," I said, voice honeyed. "The kind women get when they think they've won." Ethan stiffened. The couple at the next table glanced over, pretending not to listen. I leaned slightly forward, tone still friendly. "It's beautiful while it lasts. Then it fades, usually right about when reality kicks in." She opened her mouth, then shut it. I could see the gears turning, the part of her that wanted to clap back but didn't know how to match elegance with malice. Ethan set down his fork with a sigh. "Sloane, please, can we not do this here?" I looked at him, genuinely curious. "Do what, Ethan? Breakfast? You're the one who brought your appetite to the wrong table." His jaw twitched. "This isn't." "An affair," I supplied softly. Oh, I know, you prefer the word mistake. You always did like minimizing things that hurt me. The table went still. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. Tiffany straightened, forcing a laugh. You know, Sloane, maybe you should try moving on. Life's too short to be bitter. I smiled at her, the slow, patient kind of smile that belongs to women who already know the ending. Sweetheart, I said gently, you mistake bitterness for clarity. They taste similar, but one comes with self-respect. Her mouth fell open. Across the terrace, a waiter dropped a spoon. The timing was divine. I reached for my coffee again, unhurried. You're very young, Tiffany. That's not an insult, it's an observation. Youth makes you think love is proof of worth. I sipped. It is. It's often just proof of proximity. Ethan's head dropped into his hand. God, he muttered. Not quite, I said, but close enough for today. Tiffany laughed, brittle and sharp. You're just jealous. Oh, darling, I said, setting down my cup. I'd have to want what you have first. She went silent. Her fingers tightened around her mimosa glass until I thought it might break. I leaned back in my chair, watching the sea beyond her shoulder. The waves rolled in, smooth and endless, nature's reminder that even chaos has rhythm. Then, softly, I added, You'll learn, Tiffany. Eventually, every side dish gets cold. That landed, hard. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Ethan pushed his chair back suddenly, napkin falling to the floor. I'm going for a walk, he muttered. Of course he was. When men can't control the narrative, they retreat to pretend it's about peace. As he walked off, Tiffany turned to glare at me, eyes glossy with unshed tears. You're pathetic, she hissed. You think you're so perfect, sitting there acting superior. I smiled softly, voice almost tender. Oh no, I just know how to eat without choking. Then I stood, lifted my glass of water, and toasted the space between us. To clarity, I said, it's refreshing, isn't it? And with that, I left her sitting in her own silence, mascara quivering in the sun, the new queen of nothing at all. By late afternoon, the sun had softened into that honeyed kind of light that makes even bad decisions look beautiful. The resort had gone half quiet, guests sun-drowsy, the pool reflecting the sky like it was trying to apologize for everything. I sat beneath a striped umbrella, bare legs crossed, a book open in my lap that I wasn't reading. A glass of chilled rosé sweated elegantly beside me. To anyone watching, I looked like a woman unwinding after a long week, calm, content, a little wistful. And that's exactly what I wanted them to think. Across the pool, Tiffany Vale was performing. She'd changed into a white bikini and an attitude, arranging herself like a centerfold draped in self-importance. Every few minutes, she'd toss her hair, laugh at nothing, or adjust her sunglasses just so, making sure everyone noticed she had been noticed. Ethan lounged beside her, phone in hand, pretending to relax but checking his emails more than her. His body language screamed of a man who wanted to feel free and ended up feeling audited. I watched them over the rim of my glass, every movement measured, every sip deliberate. It's amazing how patience becomes power when you know the plot better than the players. Diego, my new favorite waiter, passed by. Another drink, Mrs. Lawson. Yes, I said, but bring it to Cabana 6 in 20 minutes. He hesitated just a flicker, then smiled. Of course. I watched him walk off, then gathered my book and stood. The air smelled of sunscreen, salt, and impending revelation. Cabana 6 was tucked into a quieter corner of the resort, half hidden behind flowering hedges. The kind of place where whispers sound louder than confessions. I sat on the edge of the lounge chair, pulled out my phone, and opened Instagram. Tiffany Vale's page sparkled at the top of my feed, Misty V bio. Manifesting love and luxury sparkles kiss. Her latest story was a slow pan across the pool, Ethan's blurred reflection beside her. Caption: Find someone who treats you like vacation feels. I nearly applauded. The irony was so thick, it could have been bottled and sold as serum. I tapped my screen twice, screenshot. Then I switched accounts. Not my real one. An old, forgotten handle from my PR consulting days, back when anonymity was an art form. At Urban Etiquette, LA, a curated page about manners, aesthetics, and moral hygiene. My secret vent page. I uploaded Tiffany's story clip to my drafts, added a soft filter that made the scene look dreamlike, and captioned it. When the wife booked the resort first. I didn't post it yet. Timing, as always, was foreplay. Instead, I opened messages and typed to Rachel Torres, the journalist friend who never missed an opportunity for irony. Me, remember that LA infidelity culture, piece you're always threatening to write. Rachel, the one about influencers dating married men. Me, I may have found your cover photo. 3 dots appeared, vanished, then returned. Rachel, tell me everything. I smiled. In time, I whispered. Diego returned with the receipt. He set it down gently, giving me a subtle look that asked questions his job description wouldn't let him say aloud. Thank you, I said, slipping a folded bill into his pocket. You've been very attentive. He smiled, not flirtatiously, but in solidarity. Service staff always know where the truth hides. They just don't usually get to root for it. After he left, I stretched out, phone in hand, the hum of the ocean filling the pauses between thoughts. Somewhere beyond the hedge, Tiffany's laughter rose again, bright, brittle, and echoing against the stone. Then Ethan's voice, lower, tired, a faint argument. I closed my eyes, smiling faintly. Cracks already. My mind drifted back to something my grandmother once told me. Never chase the snake that bites you. Just watch where it slithers and build the fire there. I opened my eyes. The sun had dipped low, gold bleeding into pink, shadows growing long across the tiles. I drafted one more line, beneath my list in the notebook beside me. Step 2, let them implode publicly. All good lessons require an audience. Then I set down my pen, raised my glass, and whispered to the sinking sun, because talking to the sky felt more rewarding than talking to my husband ever had. Cheers to education. Evening arrived like an apology. The air softened, shadows stretched, and the whole resort seemed to sigh in gold. Santa Barbara has a way of making even moral decay look cinematic. I sat at the bar that overlooked the ocean, marble countertop, dim lanterns, a faint jazz track playing as though Miles Davis himself approved of my composure. Around me, couples murmured, wine glasses chimed, and the scent of salt and citrus mingled like a perfume I might have designed just to haunt Ethan later. Another receipt, the bartender asked. He was young, too handsome, and trying not to flirt. Please, I said, smiling, keep it just shy of honest. He chuckled, not sure if that was a joke. It was. Mostly. I could see them from here, Ethan and Tiffany at a table near the railing. She'd changed again, naturally. A shimmering gold dress, all sequins and self-importance. The kind of outfit that screams I am the event. Ethan looked exhausted. The man who once ruled conference rooms now stared into a wine glass like it might refund his dignity. He wasn't speaking much. She was filling the silence with the verbal equivalent of confetti. I swirled my drink, amused. This was what he left me for, glitter and echo. The bartender returned with my glass, eyes flicking toward their table. They celebrating something. I took a slow sip, savoring the bite before I answered. Oh, I imagine so, I said. But celebrations built on delusion tend to have very short afterparties. He blinked, then smiled faintly, uncertain, intrigued. People rarely know how to respond to well-dressed honesty. I placed my glass down and pulled out my phone again. Rachel had replied. Rachel, send me details. Name's optional, I just want truth. Me, truth's the one thing that doesn't need a name. Rachel, ooh, that's a line. Me, keep it, I have plenty. I slipped the phone away, watching Tiffany pose for a selfie, head tilted, lips pursed, Ethan in the blurred background like set decoration. The flash went off twice, followed by the faint sound of her fake laugh. She posted it instantly. I knew without looking. Women like her don't wait for validation, they reload on it hourly. Sure enough, my feed lit up a moment later. Miss DV, manifesting magic with my favorite human kiss mark, grateful Santa Barbara nights. I stared at the caption, smiling the way you do when a toddler proudly shows you a crayon drawing of your house on fire. I opened my notes app, typed one line, then deleted it. Too soon. Good satire requires patience. Let the subjects hang themselves with the rope of their own enthusiasm. I turned my focus back to Ethan. He was staring at his phone now, not at her, not even pretending. When Tiffany reached to touch his arm, he pulled back just enough for her to notice. Cracks becoming fractures, delicious. I leaned back, letting the ocean wind lift a strand of my hair. If revenge were music, this was the overture, soft strings, building tension, no climax yet. The bartender leaned in. Would you like to charge this to your room, Mrs. Lawson? I smiled. No, let's keep this one off the record. As he turned away, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Ethan, you shouldn't have come here. I stared at the screen, amused. A statement like that always means the opposite. What he really meant was, I can't act like myself when you're watching me. I typed back. Me, don't worry. I came for the view, you're just blocking part of it. I set the phone down and raised my glass again, watching the horizon bleed pink into deep blue. The first stars appeared, timid but determined. A breeze carried Tiffany's voice over to me, something about followers, partnerships, brand deals. Ethan nodded absently, eyes elsewhere. Maybe on me, maybe on the wreckage of his choices. I let my smile bloom slow and unbothered. The best part of revenge isn't the explosion. It's the quiet unraveling, when they still think they're safe, and you know they're not. I finished my drink, left a crisp bill on the counter, and stood. As I passed their table, I paused just long enough to say, Ethan, Tiffany, lovely seeing you again. I do hope you two get exactly what you deserve. Tiffany's smile faltered. Ethan's knuckles went white around his glass. Good night, I added, with the grace of a woman who could set fire to the world and make it look like candlelight. Then I walked away, the sea wind curling around me like applause. Morning came dressed in gold, the kind of light that flatters everyone except the guilty. The resort was awake but unhurried. Waves sighing against the shore, staff gliding between tables with quiet smiles, and somewhere the faint laughter of people whose lives hadn't yet collapsed. I sat on my villa's balcony in a silk robe the color of calm money, pale ivory, soft as the lie Ethan once told me about business trips. Steam curled from my coffee mug. Across the manicured lawn, Tiffany was doing yoga in matching spandex, that aggressive kind of serenity people broadcast for attention. She wasn't good at it. Her balance wobbled, her face scrunched, and every few minutes she glanced toward her phone, which was conveniently propped up on a towel. Recording naturally. #mindful mornings with V. I watched her stretch, then fall out of a pose, mutter, and reset. Breathe in desperation, I murmured. Exhale denial. A text pinged. Rachel. Rachel, so she's posting again, and Ethan looks like he hasn't slept. Me, neither has his conscience. Rachel, you sure you don't want me to leak something? Me, not yet. We let the stage build itself first. Rachel, you scare me sometimes. Me, that's how you know I'm healing. I smiled faintly, setting the phone aside. Healing, yes, but not the gentle kind with bath salts and self-help quotes. Mine was surgical, clean incisions, no anesthesia. A knock at the door. Room service. A young man wheeled in a breakfast tray. Eggs, avocado toast, berries, and the kind of coffee that costs more than Tiffany's entire moral compass. He set the table carefully, glancing at the view. Beautiful morning, ma'am. It is, I said. The calm before something interesting, I think. He looked puzzled, smiled politely, and left. I took a sip of coffee. Smooth, bittersweet, honest, everything Ethan was. As I sliced into my toast, I heard laughter outside, high-pitched, performative. Tiffany again, this time joined by another guest, a woman in mirrored sunglasses and too much perfume. "Ethan's still asleep," Tiffany was saying. "Poor baby, he's exhausted. We've just been so busy." There was that tittering laugh again, followed by the rustle of jewelry and shallow validation. I didn't look up. I simply turned my phone toward me and hit record. The sound was clear enough. It wasn't for posting, not yet, just insurance, the kind that pays dividends in humiliation later. 10 minutes later, Ethan appeared on the path below, sunglasses on, phone in hand, tension radiating like heat. He wasn't walking toward Tiffany. He was packing, scrolling, typing, probably checking comments or emails he didn't want her to see. He looked tired, not just physically, spiritually tired, the way men look when they realize the grass on the other side is synthetic. Tiffany bounded over, wrapped her arms around him from behind. He stiffened, didn't turn. Something in me, quiet, detached, almost pitied him. Almost. I raised my mug slightly in salute, even though he couldn't see me, and whispered, "Good morning, consequences." By 10 a.m., I was at the spa, lying face down on a heated table, while a woman named Amara worked jasmine oil into my shoulders. "So much tension here," she murmured. "You must have a lot on your mind." "Just men," I said, "and how they underestimate the quiet ones." She laughed softly. "That's the worst mistake." "Second worst," I corrected. "The first is thinking they'll get away with it." As the hour passed, I let the rhythm of the waves and her hands untangle the last threads of hesitation. This was no longer grief. It was choreography. Every move from here would be deliberate. By the time I left the spa, Tiffany's new post was already up. "Misty V. Self-care days with my man kiss person female life is too short to worry about jealous people V-vibes only." Her man hadn't liked the post. But the comment section was thriving. Emojis, praise, and one too honest remark from an account I didn't recognize. At Rachel Writes Things. Funny how confidence sounds louder when it's scared. I smiled. Rachel understood the assignment. And as I slipped my sunglasses on, I thought, the best revenge isn't destroying them. It's watching them do it themselves, while you look flawless in the background. By late afternoon, the resort glowed like a film set, sunlight slanting through palm fronds, champagne corks popping somewhere, a pianist coaxing out the kind of jazz that makes secrets sound elegant. I chose a poolside cabana instead of the beach. Less exposure, more control. The white curtains fluttered lazily in the breeze, and I stretched out on a lounge chair in a linen dress that looked accidental but wasn't. Every part of me was curated, my hair in an undone bun, gold hoops catching the light, bare feet against soft towels. I'd been here almost an hour, pretending to read The Art of War. I didn't need the book. I could have written my own version, The Socialite's Guide to Psychological Precision. From across the pool, I spotted Ethan, alone. He had that restless, cornered energy, scrolling through his phone, pausing, frowning. Tiffany wasn't beside him, likely inside, filming another day in my life segment that conveniently omitted any actual life. A waiter approached with a menu. "Would you like another spritzer, Ms. Mercer?" I smiled. "Yes, and add something sweet. Revenge always digests better with sugar." He blinked, unsure whether to laugh. I didn't clarify. Ethan's gaze drifted over a few times before he stood, hesitated, then started walking toward me. His footsteps on the deck sounded like regret with confidence issues. "Sloane," he said, voice low, cautious. I looked up from my book. "Ethan's, you look rumpled." He sighed, sitting on the chair beside me like a man approaching a live wire. "Why are you here?" "Because I booked this resort 3 months ago," I said. "Apparently, fidelity wasn't the only thing you forgot to mention." He winced. "You're enjoying this?" "Enjoying?" I tilted my head. No, enjoying is for desserts. This is reflection, therapeutic observation. He rubbed his temples. You don't have to do this. Do what? Exist. Breathe the same overpriced air. You booked me into this performance, darling. I'm just making sure my role's well delivered. The waiter returned with my drink, a pale pink spritzer and a slice of key lime pie. Ethan looked at the pie, then at me. You never used to eat dessert. I never used to compete with influencers either, I said sweetly, lifting my fork. But life's full of surprises. He exhaled, leaned back. Tiffany doesn't know you're here. I laughed softly. Ethan, Tiffany barely knows where she is. His phone buzzed. He looked down, frowned, then turned it face down on the table. Don't tell me, I said. She's upset you didn't comment under her latest declaration of self-love. He gave me that look, the one men use when they've lost control, but think they can still negotiate it back. This isn't you, Sloane. Oh, it's very me, I said. You just never met this version because she was too busy making your life easy. He fell quiet. For a long moment, the only sounds were laughter from the pool, the piano from the bar, and the ocean murmuring like a witness with no intention of testifying. Look, he said finally, I made mistakes. Plural, I interjected. Yes, we've established that. I didn't mean to hurt you. I smiled, fork paused midair. That's what makes it poetic, Ethan. The worst damage is always accidental. He stared at me, jaw tight. I took a delicate bite of pie, closed my eyes briefly. You know, I said, savoring it, for all her posts about happiness, she doesn't taste like satisfaction, not even close. He stood abruptly, muttering, You haven't changed. On the contrary, I said, I've evolved, I'm now fluent in irony. He walked away, shoulders tense, and I watched him go with the calm of someone who'd already written the ending. When he disappeared into the main building, I picked up my phone and texted Rachel. Me, he's unraveling. Stage 2 begins soon. Rachel, you sure? Me, positive. Never rush a roast. You'll burn the flavor out. Then I leaned back, eyes on the ocean. The sun had started to dip lower, spilling molten light across the waves. It looked like a slow applause from the universe itself. And in that golden hush, I thought, revenge isn't chaos, it's choreography, and I've only just begun to dance. By the time the sky began to fade from honey to bruise, the resort had shifted moods. Families drifted inside, couples dressed for dinner, and the air, once thick with coconut oil and laughter, now smelled of seared scallops and ambition. I stayed in my cabana longer than I should have, half reclined, bare feet crossed at the ankle, glass of rosé sweating on the table beside me. The ocean whispered in that steady rhythm it reserves for the observant, constant, steady, vaguely threatening. Somewhere, a violin started playing, soft, melancholic, like background music for good decisions you'll later regret. I watched as lights came alive across the property. Strings of gold bulbs, torches flickering near the boardwalk, people beginning to glide from villa to restaurant in a choreography of curated ease. And still, I lingered. Because I could. Because once upon a time, Ethan would have texted by now, "Where are you? Dinner," in 10. Now, the silence was its own exquisite revenge. My phone buzzed, a notification from Tiffany's Instagram. Miss TV, live. Okay, guys, guess who's here with me tonight? Of course, the woman had the emotional depth of a pop-up ad. I tapped in, mostly for research. There she was, bathed in warm light, Ethan at her side, forced smile, eyes tight. They were at the resort's rooftop restaurant, a place I knew well. She was chattering into the camera, doing that thing where her voice goes up an octave whenever she's near a lens. And we're so excited for dinner. The food here is like next level, right, babe? Ethan nodded once, then looked away, jaw flexing. She followed his gaze toward the pool area. I saw her blink, then narrow her eyes. She'd seen me. Even through a screen, I could feel the static shift, that little spike of performative panic she'd try to convert into poise. Anyway, she said too brightly, Some people can't let go of the past, but we're just living our best life. Subtle as a megaphone. I smiled into my drink. Bless her heart, I murmured. She's allergic to grace. Then I exited the live. Let her perform to the void. I had other kinds of audiences in mind. The waiter passed by to collect glasses. Would you like me to bring the check, Ms. Mercer? Not yet, I said. I'm still digesting character development. He laughed softly, unsure if I was joking. I was. I stayed until the violin stopped, until the light faded completely, until the sky became that perfect cinematic navy, the color of realization. When I finally stood, the resort was quiet except for the ocean and the faint clink of dishes from dinner service. Walking back toward my villa, I passed the rooftop terrace. From below, I could hear Tiffany's laugh, that exaggerated, helium sound that carries best when it's trying too hard. Ethan said something low. She snapped back louder. People glanced. A waiter froze mid-step. Oh. Trouble on the influencer front. I didn't pause, didn't need to. I'd learned that the best satisfaction doesn't come from watching the scene unfold. It's knowing you caused the conditions for it to exist. Back in my villa, I poured myself a glass of water, then caught my reflection in the mirror. Calm, poised, slight smile. I almost didn't recognize myself, not because I'd changed, but because I'd finally stopped performing softness for people who mistook it for weakness. I stepped onto the balcony again, the night air cool and salted. Down below, the waves crashed steady against the shore. Each one felt like punctuation. Tomorrow would come, with its headlines and whispers and can you believe breakfasts. But for now, twilight was mine, the sacred hour between suffering and strategy. I took a sip, looked toward the glowing rooftop and whispered, Lesson 1, darling, never underestimate the woman who stayed quiet too long. It was the kind of night that pretends to be calm. The kind that wraps itself in candlelight and linen napkins, where laughter sounds civilized and secrets travel on the clink of cutlery. I wasn't supposed to go out again. But I've never been one to resist watching a good show, especially one I unknowingly funded. By 9, I'd changed into black silk, simple gold earrings, and that faint perfume Ethan used to call dangerous in small doses. Poetic, really, that he'd get another whiff tonight. The hostess recognized me. Table for one, Ms. Mercer. Her tone had that polished neutrality of someone trained not to gossip, but dying to. Corner table, I said, somewhere with a view. She led me to a small booth near the window. Perfect sightline to the terrace, Tiffany in sequins again, Ethan beside her, shoulders heavy as unpaid karma. I ordered champagne, not because I needed it, but because it's the kind of drink that forgives bad company. They hadn't noticed me yet. She was talking too loudly again, hands moving like she was conducting her own monologue. Ethan sat stiff, glancing around, clearly counting invisible exits. It would have been sad if it weren't so educational. Rough night for the happy couple, a voice asked beside me. I turned slightly. The man at the next table, tan, salt and pepper hair, the casual confidence of someone who owns too many boats. He nodded subtly toward them. You can tell. I used to work in PR. I can smell an impending press statement from a mile away. I smiled faintly. You're not wrong. That woman's one hashtag away from public crisis. He chuckled. You sound like you've got experience. Oh, I've audited the course, I said, sipping. Graduated top of my class. He studied me for a moment, intrigued, but I turned my gaze back toward the terrace. Tiffany had just stood up, too abruptly, glass sloshing. Ethan caught her wrist. She yanked free. It was subtle, contained, but tension has a way of spreading, like perfume or gossip. A few heads turned. The waiter pretended not to notice. I saw Ethan murmur something. Tiffany's lips tightened. Then, right on cue, her phone came out. She angled it, smiled through the storm, whispered into the camera, Some people just can't stand when you shine. And then she walked out. The silence she left behind was brittle. Ethan stayed seated, rubbing his forehead. The PR man beside me gave a low whistle. She's about to go live, isn't she? She's probably already live, I said. My phone buzzed before I could finish the sentence. Rachel. Rachel, you seeing this? She's broadcasting. Me, of course she is. Rachel, she just said fake wives should mind their own marriages. Me, oh, how literary of her. I set my glass down, the bubbles rising slow and lazy, as if the night itself was holding its breath. Ethan finally looked up and saw me. Our eyes met across the restaurant's soft chaos. His expression flickered, recognition, regret, a hint of fear, the trifecta of poetic justice. I didn't wave, didn't smile, just lifted my glass slightly in a quiet salute and mouthed cheers. He stared for a moment longer, then pushed back from the table and left. No jacket, no tip, just a man walking straight into the storm he built. The PR man next to me raised a brow. You really did graduate top of your class. Magna cum laude, I said. He laughed, then lowered his voice. If I were him, I'd apologize publicly by sunrise. I smiled into my champagne. Oh, he will, just not to me. Outside, the sea wind picked up, scattering napkins and half-meant promises. I stayed until the restaurant emptied, savoring dessert I didn't want, letting the night fold itself around me. When I finally stood, the hostess handed me my wrap and said quietly, "For what it's worth, you looked like the calmest person in the room." I met her gaze, smiled just enough. That's the trick, always let the fire burn elsewhere. Outside, I could see Tiffany's live still going, her reflection in the glass doors, animated, indignant, unraveling in high definition. Somewhere behind her, Ethan appeared in the frame, trying to grab the phone. The screen went black. I exhaled softly, and curtain. Then I walked back toward my villa under a sky sharp with stars and the faint scent of endings. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't what you do. It's what you let them show the world all by themselves. Sunlight spilled through the curtains like it had something to prove. The ocean hummed, slow and rhythmic, as if the whole coast was trying to recover from whatever mess last night had birthed. I woke up late, no alarm, no guilt. Just that heavy, languid satisfaction that comes from a good night's sleep and even better karma. The phone was already buzzing on the nightstand. I didn't rush. I stretched, yawned, took a sip of the lemon water I'd left by the bed. Then, and only then, did I check it. Notifications, dozens of them. Rachel had texted, twice. Rachel, it's everywhere. Rachel, your girl went nuclear on live and deleted it 20 minutes later. Rachel, but not before someone screen recorded the whole thing. I smiled, half asleep still. Me, of course they did. No one ever deletes a meltdown fast enough. I scrolled through my feed. There it was, clips, edits, reaction videos. Tiffany in tears, her mascara running with all the sincerity money can buy. Her voice pitched high, indignant, slurring around phrases like fake wife, obsessed ex, unbothered energy. It was chaos, but make it fashion. Some accounts defended her, others didn't. And somewhere in the middle, nestled between gossip and glee, one comment stood out. At Rachel Writes Things. It's always fascinating watching someone try to swim in the pool they set on fire. I actually laughed, out loud, real laughter, the kind that fills a room and feels like oxygen after months of shallow breathing. The resort was quieter than usual when I finally stepped onto my balcony. Guests whispered over breakfast, eyes flicking toward the rooftop restaurant. Staff moved with that practiced caution that says we all know, but we're pretending we don't. Below, near the pool, Ethan sat alone, head bowed, phone in hand, sunglasses hiding nothing. He looked smaller somehow, like the world had finally caught up to him. I poured myself coffee, leaned on the railing. "Good morning, darling," I murmured. "Welcome to accountability." He glanced up then, as if he'd heard. Our eyes met across the courtyard, just long enough for him to look away first. A small victory, but a satisfying one. I took my time getting ready, linen pants, soft white shirt, hair twisted into something that whispered I'm thriving, not trying. Then I went down to breakfast. The hostess greeted me like we were co-conspirators. "Good morning, Ms. Mercer. Shall I seat you on the terrace?" "Please," I said. "Somewhere with good lighting. I feel like today deserves documentation." She smiled knowingly. Halfway through my omelet, a familiar voice floated from behind me, hushed, sharp. "She's here, still." It was Tiffany, predictably. I didn't turn. I let her words hang in the air, brittle as sponge sugar. Ethan's lower, steadier tone followed. "Tiff, stop, not here." "Don't tell me to stop. She's enjoying this." "Maybe because you gave her reason to," he muttered. That silence afterward, chef's kiss. I turned slightly, met her eyes over my shoulder, and smiled. That small, polished, camera-ready smile that says everything without saying a word. "Morning," I said lightly. "You both look rested." Tiffany blinked, color rising in her cheeks. "You think this is funny?" "Oh no," I said, stirring my coffee. "I think it's inevitable." Ethan muttered something under his breath, grabbed his plate, and walked off toward the buffet. Tiffany stood there for a beat, trembling, furious, performing control. "You don't scare me, Sloane." "Of course not," I said. "That would require self-awareness." Her mouth opened, then closed. And just like that, she turned and left, the sound of her heels fatting faster than her dignity. I exhaled softly, cut another bite of omelet, and thought. Revenge doesn't always come in fire. Sometimes it arrives in daylight, served warm, with excellent coffee. My phone buzzed again. Rachel. "Rachel, the clip's viral. Even brands are backing out of her collaborations." "Me, actions have consequences." "Rachel, you're scary when you're calm." "Me, that's the only way it works." The ocean shimmered, seagulls wheeled lazily overhead, and the world for once was perfectly balanced. I lifted my coffee in a small toast to no one in particular. "To lessons learned," I whispered. Then smiled, "and to electives still pending." I stayed at my table long after they left, letting the breakfast crowd thin around me. The sun had climbed higher now, spilling gold across the terrace in a way that made the ocean glitter like a conspiracy. The waiter approached quietly, a young man with kind eyes and the sort of posture that suggested he'd witnessed more marital collapses than therapy ever could. "More coffee, Ms. Mercer." "Please," I said, "and maybe a side of moral clarity if the kitchen's offering." He blinked, then smiled, that cautious smile service staff wear when they want to laugh but also want to keep their job. I liked him immediately. From my seat, I could see Ethan packing by the pool, one hand on his phone, the other running through his hair. His movements were sharp, impatient, the choreography of a man realizing the narrative had escaped him. Tiffany was nowhere in sight, possibly in her suite, rewriting her apology to the internet for the third time. Influencers treat scandal like skincare. First denial, then detox. My spoon clinked softly against porcelain as I stirred the coffee. Every motion deliberate, unhurried, a small rebellion against his urgency. When Ethan finally turned toward the terrace, I didn't move. I let him approach, let the tension arrive like background music. He stopped by my table, hesitant, eyes hidden behind dark lenses. "Can we talk?" I looked up at him slowly, as though considering whether this was a conversation or an archaeological dig. "About what?" He sighed. "Sloane, come on, you've made your point." "My point?" I raised an eyebrow. "You think this was my doing." "Don't play innocent." "Innocent?" I smiled faintly. "Darling, I stopped auditioning for that role the day you brought her into our marriage." He lowered his voice, leaning in slightly. "You think humiliating her helps you, helps anyone." "Helps," I set my cup down. "No, but it educates, there's a difference." He exhaled sharply, frustration coiling in his jaw. "You're enjoying this." "Not quite," I tilted my head. "I'm savoring the symmetry." For a moment, he just stood there, the silence thick between us, broken only by the sea's lazy rhythm. Then he said quietly, "You've changed." "No," I replied. "You just never paid attention long enough to notice I was never simple." The waiter returned then, discreet as an angel, placing the bill beside my plate. I signed it, added a generous tip, and rose with that calm grace I'd perfected through years of restraint. Ethan moved aside automatically. Old habits die politely. As I passed him, I caught the faint scent of the cologne I once bought him, a reminder of foolish loyalty bottled in bergamot and regret. I stopped just beside him, close enough for him to hear the smile in my voice. "You know, Ethan," I said softly, "for someone who always claimed to hate drama, you sure built a 3-act tragedy out of your own ego." Then I walked away, through the terrace, past the glass doors, into the cool hush of the hotel lobby. The concierge looked up, startled, then smiled politely. "Ms. Mercer, shall I arrange your car?" "Not yet," I said, glancing toward the lounge where sunlight dappled over marble floors. "I think I'll sit a while, let the world catch up." He nodded. I took a seat by the window, crossed my legs, and opened my phone again. The top headline glowed like poetry. Social media star Tiffany, K faces backlash after livestream breakdown. I scrolled through the comments, strangers dissecting her tantrum, women quoting her lines with laughing emojis, one particularly cutting post saying, "You can't steal peace from someone who built it herself." I smiled. Somewhere, somehow, the universe was finally starting to sound like me. The sea glittered outside, bright, endless, a little cruel. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe without apology. The spa smelled like eucalyptus and money, the kind of scent designed to erase consequences. Low music pulsed through the marble corridor, some wordless melody meant to remind you of calm, while your brain was still busy filing grievances. The receptionist greeted me with a smile so bright, it should have come with a disclaimer. "Good morning, Ms. Mercer. Deep tissue or detox?" I thought about it. "Detox," I said, "for the soul, but if you can't manage that, the shoulders will do." She laughed softly, unaware that I meant every word. They led me to a lounge, so tranquil it could have been a set, white towels rolled like scrolls, glasses of cucumber water sweating elegantly on silver trays. I slipped into a robe, tied it tight, and sank into one of those impossibly plush recliners that make you question every life choice that didn't involve marrying a masseuse. The morning sun slanted through frosted glass, painting pale gold stripes on the floor. I watched them move, inch by inch, as time stretched thin and slow. A woman beside me, early 40s, effortlessly chic, with hair the color of ash and champagne, lowered her magazine. "Crazy morning, huh?" she said with that half-laugh of someone who's already read every headline. I turned slightly, polite smile in place. "You could say that." She tilted her head, studying me. "You look familiar, do you?" Her eyes widened. "Oh my God, you're her, aren't you?" I blinked slow. "Depends on the her. I contain multitudes." She laughed a real laugh. "The wife, the one everyone's talking about." I sighed, the picture of weary grace. That would be me, Sloane Mercer, the artist formerly known as Mrs. Ethan, whatever his last name was. "Wow," she breathed. "You're surprisingly calm." "Why wouldn't I be?" I said, reaching for my cucumber water. "It's the first time in years he's been the one losing sleep." Her smile turned conspiratorial. "I watched the clip this morning. The girlfriend Tiffany, right? She completely imploded." "Exploded," I corrected gently. "Implosion suggests self-awareness. This was more performance art." She chuckled, shaking her head. "Well, whatever it was, the internet's on your side. You're sort of a feminist icon now." I almost choked on my drink. "Oh, God, don't curse me like that." "No, really," she said, leaning closer. "There's already a hashtag, schooled by Sloane, you're trending." I stared at her for a moment, then laughed softly. "Schooled by Sloane," I repeated. "Of course there is." It felt absurdly poetic, the kind of full-circle irony that made you wonder if the universe had a sense of humor. The attendant appeared then, whispering that my masseuse was ready. I stood, wrapping my robe a little tighter, and offered the woman a nod. "Pleasure chatting," I said. "Enjoy the calm before someone else's storm." She grinned. "You're kind of my hero, you know that." "Lower your standards," I said lightly. "It's safer." The massage room was dim, scented with lavender and soft light. I lay face down, the table warm beneath me, and felt the first press of skilled fingers into my shoulders. "You're tense," the masseuse murmured. "Occupational hazard," I replied. "Stress." "Resolution," I corrected. "It's heavier." She laughed quietly, then fell into silence, her hands working in steady, rhythmic circles. With each breath, the noise of the world, the scandals, the whispers, the phone buzzing somewhere beyond the walls began to fade. For the first time in months, I wasn't performing calm. I was living it. My mind wandered, as it does when the body finally stops pretending not to ache. I thought of Ethan, probably still trying to contain the wildfire he'd started. I thought of Tiffany, trying to find filters strong enough to hide public humiliation. And then I thought of me, a woman in a spa robe, at peace, trending. "Deep breath," the masseuse said softly. I inhaled, long and slow. The air tasted like eucalyptus and closure. By the time I stepped out of the spa, the sun had shifted from gold to white, that harsh, no-nonsense kind of light that turns everything honest. The hotel lobby was humming now, full of guests pretending not to be curious. The concierge smiled at me with the overly bright politeness reserved for someone who's gone viral but tips well. "Lovely day, Ms. Mercer," he said. "Isn't it just?" I replied. "The weather's scandal-proof." My phone buzzed again, a flurry of notifications that looked like static at first, then sharpened into names and headlines. Entertainment Weekly, Buzz Pop, LA Daily. Apparently, I'd become a full-blown news cycle. Rachel's name flashed next. I answered as I walked toward the exit. Sunglasses sliding into place like armor. "Rachel, you've officially made the front page." "Me, the Times or the tabloids." "Rachel, both. You're trending in 4 countries." "Me, that's 3 more than our anniversary trip." Her laugh crackled through the line. "Sloane, listen, someone from the Social Hour wants to interview you. They said the word exclusive at least 3 times." "Exclusive to what?" I asked dryly. "Bad decisions." "They're pitching it as the wife's perspective." "Oh, please. I spent 5 years living that perspective. It's overrated." "You could control the narrative, though," Rachel said. "You've got momentum. People love you right now, you're smart, you're funny, you didn't melt down. You handled it like a woman who saw it coming," I finished. "Exactly." I paused by the glass doors, watching the sunlight blaze against the cars outside. Somewhere in the distance, the sea gleamed like it was in on the joke. "Let them talk for a while," I said finally. "The echo's usually louder than the truth. I'll decide when to answer." Rachel sighed. "You always know how to make silence sound expensive." "That's the trick," I said. "Silence is just confidence that doesn't need PR." I hung up and stepped outside. The air was warm, salt-bright, threaded with the faint roar of the city beyond the coastline. I slipped into my waiting car, the interior cool and immaculate, smelling faintly of jasmine and control. As the driver pulled onto the boulevard, my phone buzzed again, a message this time from an unknown number. "Unknown, Yuan, hope it feels good." No name, but I knew the tone. "Ethan." I stared at it for a long moment before typing back. "Me, winning was never the point. Watching you learn was." I didn't wait for a reply. Some lessons only land in silence. The car glided along Ocean Avenue, the palm trees flashing like punctuation. To my right, the ocean stretched out, endless, glittering, almost smug. I thought about how strange it was, the way peace could arrive looking nothing like forgiveness. In the rearview mirror, I caught my own reflection, hair still damp from the spa, sunglasses hiding the quiet exhaustion beneath. I looked like a woman who'd just rewritten her story and wasn't entirely sure what the next chapter held. But I knew this. It would be written in my voice. The cafe was one of those quiet, glass-walled sanctuaries tucked between boutiques, all minimal decor, velvet chairs, and the faint smell of roasted coffee and ambition. I chose a corner table, the kind that lets you watch without being watched. The barista recognized me, of course. They always do now, not from magazines or films, but from the internet's favorite morality play. "Double espresso," I said. "No foam, no fuss." He smiled, nervous, like serving me might count as taking a side. "Of course, Ms. Mercer." I sat back, let the hum of conversation wash over me. 2 tables over, a group of women scrolled through their phones, whispering the way people do when they've found something half shocking, half addictive. Every now and then, one of them glanced up at me. I met her gaze once, and she looked away too quickly. It's fascinating, really, how scandal democratizes voyeurism. Everyone feels entitled to look, to interpret, to judge. And yet, when you meet their eyes, they remember you're human, for about half a second. My espresso arrived. The cup was tiny, white, perfect. The bitterness hit my tongue like honesty. Across the room, a woman approached. Late 30s, blonde hair, soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mrs. Mercer," she asked gently. I corrected, offering the faintest smile. "But yes, you found her." "I'm from the Morning Edit." She extended a card. "We'd love to feature you in an exclusive." "I'm sure you would," I said, glancing at the card but not taking it. "Unfortunately, I'm only granting exclusives to my peace of mind." She laughed awkwardly, mistaking charm for invitation. "Of course, I understand, but people are really connecting with your story. They're calling you." "Relatable," I guessed. "That's always how it starts before they turn you into a meme." She blinked. "Actually, they're calling you empowering." I stirred my espresso, slow and even. "Empowerment is just revenge with better PR." She hesitated. "Would you, just one quote perhaps, about what you've learned?" I looked up then, catching her gaze, calm, cool, slightly amused. "Yes, I've learned that the truth ages better than scandal. And that silence," I paused for effect, "silence ruins the algorithm." Her mouth opened like she might say something else, but she didn't. She just nodded, flustered, and backed away, the scent of desperation following her out the door. I smiled into my cup. Rachel texted again. "Rachel, you've hit 1,000,000 views. Tiffany's gone quiet." "Me, silence looks good on her." Rachel and Ethan. "Me, learning that the internet never forgets what wives do in heels." I finished my espresso, left a tip big enough to make the barista rethink his career path, and stood. Outside, the sun had mellowed, softening into that honeyed afternoon glow Lowe's Angels saves for the unapologetic. My heels clicked against the pavement, each step measured, not toward anything, not away, just forward. Near the curb, a sleek black car pulled up. The driver stepped out, holding the door open with a quiet "Ms. Mercer." I slid inside, exhaling. The city blurred past palm trees, shop windows, faces craning toward their phones. Somewhere between Wilshire and the coastline, a thought came to me, small, sharp, uninvited. I hadn't just survived the humiliation. I'd rewritten the language of it. And that, I realized, was the real revenge. It wasn't triumph. I felt leaving that cafe more like the quiet hum after an earthquake, when you realize the furniture's still standing, and you are too. Outside, the last of the sunlight bled across the skyline, like watercolor fading. My phone buzzed again, a new message, this time from an unknown contact. The preview line read, "You think it's over." I stared at it for a second, the screen's glow catching in the reflection of my glass. Rachel noticed my expression. "Who's that?" I locked the screen, smile cool and precise. Probably a reminder that stories never really end when the credits roll. I raised my glass. "To sequels." Rachel clinked hers against mine. "To women who write them." We drank, the city glittering beyond the windows, bright, vast, and full of the kind of quiet that always comes before the next chapter. The night had settled over Lowe's angels like expensive silk, smooth, dark, and quietly dangerous. You could almost hear the city exhale after a long day of pretending. I pulled into the driveway just as the garden lights flickered on, the kind that Ethan insisted we install for ambience. Funny how the house still glowed, like a promise he couldn't keep. Inside, everything was still, the kind of quiet that feels intentional, like the universe holding its breath. I kicked off my heels, poured myself a glass of white wine, and let the cool air from the open window brush against my skin. The moonlight pooled over the marble floor like a second thought. My phone buzzed again, the same number. "You think it's over?" I stared at the message, the corner of my mouth twitching upward. "Cute," I murmured to no one in particular. He finally learned suspense. A second message followed. "You'll want to see this. Check your email." For a moment, I hesitated. Then I set the glass down, walked over to my laptop, and opened my inbox. One new email, no subject line. The sender, unknown. I clicked, and there it was, photos. Of Ethan and her. But not the kind that sting, the kind that speak. The kind that tell you just how far someone's pride will fall when it's out of your orbit. He looked wrecked. Unshaven, gaunt, sitting in what appeared to be a cheap apartment with a bottle of something tragic on the counter. And the girl, the same mistress who used to sashay around Instagram like she'd won a prize, was mid-scream. Not angry, not defiant, just broken. The subject line popped up again in my head, even though there wasn't one. It didn't need one. The pictures said enough. I should have felt satisfaction, maybe even joy. Instead, I felt an odd stillness, the kind you get when the final puzzle piece clicks in and you realize the picture isn't as beautiful as you hoped. I took another sip of wine and whispered, "Well, darling, I did warn you, everyone learns eventually." Then, quietly, I forwarded the email to myself, archived the message, and blocked the sender. Because closure, my dear, is not about burning the bridge. It's about owning the land it stood on. Outside, the wind rustled the lemon trees, brushing the window just enough to sound like applause. I looked around the house, pristine, ordered, unbothered. It wasn't a home anymore, but a museum of who I used to be. And maybe that was all right. I picked up my phone, opened notes, and started typing. The Side Chick's Guide to Getting Schooled, a handbook for the understudies of self-destruction. I smiled. Lesson 1, never mistake borrowed spotlight for belonging. Somewhere between the hum of the city and the clink of my glass, I realized this wasn't revenge anymore. It was the start of something entirely new. A reintroduction. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel angry. I just felt ready. Morning came bright and unapologetic. The kind of golden sunlight that spills into your room like it knows it's welcome. I woke before my alarm, the air crisp and honey-scented from the jasmine outside the window. For once, I didn't feel that tug of unfinished anger, that weight of remembering. I just lay there, watching the light shift across the ceiling, and thought, so this is what freedom sounds like. Coffee brewed in the kitchen, strong, dark, and exactly the way Ethan hated it. I smiled at that. Small victories are still victories. My phone buzzed again, not another mystery text this time, but a cascade of notifications. Email pings, mentions, DMs. I walked to the counter, mug in hand, and unlocked my phone. The screen lit up like confetti. Hundreds of reposts, thousands of likes. And right there, trending in the corner of my feed, the Sloane Standard. I frowned, half laughing. Oh no, they're turning me into a movement. But they had. Someone had found the essay I posted last night, the one that began with, Lesson 1, never mistake borrowed spotlight for belonging. Apparently, it struck a chord. Within hours, women were quoting it, remixing it, creating reels set to pop anthems and string quartets alike. Talk shows picked it up. Bloggers declared it the manifesto of modern dignity. And somewhere, a think piece called me the voice of post-patriarchal poise. Please, I just wrote what I wished someone had told me sooner. Rachel called 30 minutes later, breathless. Do you know what's happening? You're everywhere, Sloane. Every headline, every morning show. I poured myself another cup, keeping my tone deliberately casual. I saw, apparently survival sells. Not just survival, she said. The way you did it. No tears, no rants, no messy public meltdown, just this elegant, quiet demolition. They love it. They love you. I looked out the window. The lemon trees were heavy with fruit, sunlight dripping through the branches like molten gold. Maybe the world had finally learned that women could win without screaming. Rachel's voice softened. So what now? I smiled. Now I write the rest. And I did. By noon, I'd outlined the next 5 chapters. By evening, my inbox was full of offers, podcasts, book deals, collaborations. By nightfall, my PR agent said, "You've gone from betrayed wife to brand." But the best moment came around sunset, when I received one last message. A name I hadn't blocked. Ethan. Congratulations. You always did know how to turn pain into poetry. I stared at it for a long minute, then replied. Thank you. I finally learned how to edit the ending. Then I hit send, blocked the number, and closed my laptop. Outside, the first streetlights blinked awake. Inside, I raised my glass to my own reflection, calm, composed, quietly triumphant. My name is Sloane Mercer, I said softly, and I was the smartest woman in LA until I realized I'd been walking blind. But I see perfectly now. I smiled. Lesson 2. Never underestimate a woman who learns her worth mid-story. And as the evening melted into gold and glass, Sloane Mercer, ex-wife, survivor, and freshly minted icon, sipped her wine and began to write again. Not revenge, not grief. Just life. And this time, it was hers alone. 1 year later. There's something poetic about coming full circle in a city that feeds on reinvention. Los Angeles has no memory, only headlines. But I do. 1 year later, and my name isn't just whispered in those glossy circles anymore. It's printed on book jackets and quoted under Instagram reels about healing in style. The Side Chick's Guide to Getting Schooled debuted at number 3 on the New York Times list. By week 2, it was number 1. By month 3, it was a movement. I built a company out of it, Mercer Method Media. A digital platform for women who refuse to collapse quietly. We host panels, produce podcasts, and don't mess with her into a branding strategy. I still live in the same house, though. The lemon trees are taller now, the air sweeter. Some nights I walk barefoot on the patio and think about the woman I was, the one who mistook stability for love, silence for peace. She was clever, but she didn't know power yet. Today, I was scheduled for a keynote speech at the Beverly Regent, the kind of event where the carpet smells like ambition and the women wear confidence like perfume. The hall glittered with people, PR agents, columnists, influencers. And as fate would have it, a familiar profile in the 3rd row. Ethan. I recognized him instantly, the posture still too proud, the eyes dimmer now. He had the look of someone who'd learned humility too late. Our eyes met for a second. He tried a small smile, that same half-charm that once bought him forgiveness. But I'd spent the year learning that nostalgia is just a marketing tactic for pain. So I smiled back, cool, professional, merciful, and walked to the podium. The lights were blinding, but I'd gotten used to that. The applause washed over me like a wave. I waited, poised, and when it quieted, I began. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Cold means emotionless, detached. But healing, real healing, is warm. It glows. It invites everyone who doubted you to bask in your light, whether they deserve it or not. Laughter rippled through the crowd, the knowing kind. A year ago, I thought I'd lost everything. Now, I realize I just made space for better furniture. The audience erupted. Even Ethan smiled faintly, like he finally understood the joke, and that it wasn't about him anymore. Afterward, he waited near the back as people swarmed me for photos and autographs. When the crowd thinned, he stepped closer. "Sloane," he said softly, like he wasn't sure he had the right anymore. "You did it." I looked him over, not unkindly, just completely over it. "Did what?" I asked. "Turned the whole thing into art." I tilted my head, lips curling into a soft smile. "No, Ethan, I turned the whole thing into me." He nodded slowly. "You look happy." "I am," I said. "It's expensive but worth every cent." Then I excused myself, took my glass of champagne, and walked toward the exit, the crowd parting like the Red Sea around a woman who'd learned how to part her own. Outside, the air was cool, electric. Flashbulbs flared as I stepped into the evening light, sequins glinting like small promises kept. Behind me, laughter echoed. Ahead of me, the city glowed, wide open and waiting. My driver opened the door. I paused for a second, taking in the skyline. The same city that once made me doubt everything about myself now mirrored me back in gold. I slipped into the car and whispered, almost to myself, "Lesson 3, never waste your heartbreak, monetize it." And as the car pulled away, I smiled, the kind of smile that only comes from writing your own ending. And that, my darlings, was the Side Chick's Guide to Getting Schooled. The unofficial handbook for anyone who's ever been underestimated, side-eyed, or sidelined, and came back looking like a headline. If you've ever found yourself sipping coffee and thinking, "Wait a second, I deserve better than this circus," then Sloane Mercer is your patron saint of poetic revenge. Tell me, have you ever had a Sloane moment? That instant where you realize the plot twist was you all along. Drop your story in the comments. I read them, religiously. And if you loved this slow burn revenge as much as Sloane loved her quiet victories, don't forget to subscribe to Everyday Dramas, where every week we unpack another storm in heels, pearls, and perfectly timed sarcasm. Because here, darling, heartbreak isn't the ending. It's the opening scene, kiss mark. And that, my darlings, was the Side Chick's Guide to Getting Schooled. The unofficial handbook for anyone who's ever been underestimated, side-eyed, or sidelined, and came back looking like a headline. If you've ever found yourself sipping coffee and thinking, "Wait a second, I deserve better than this circus," then Sloane Mercer is your patron saint of poetic revenge. Tell me, have you ever had a Sloane moment? That instant where you realize the plot twist was you all along. Drop your story in the comments. I read them, religiously. And if you loved this slow burn revenge as much as Sloane loved her quiet victories, don't forget to subscribe to Everyday Dramas, where every week we unpack another storm in heels, pearls, and perfectly timed sarcasm. Because here, darling, heartbreak isn't the ending. It's the opening scene, kiss mark.